Hey everybody, Mick Lebinskas here from She's Building a Robot. I'm coming to you from an Airbnb, which was the site of a functionally.com offsite in the last couple of days, but they have now all cleared off, and I am here finishing the coffee off and very happily chatting to a friend of mine who I've known for a number of years now, Jade Feng.
Hey, g'day. How's it going?
So Jade has wonderfully put in a good day there, but she is whilst we're both in the Bay Area, we are unfortunately separated by the 280. I'm in Woodside, and Jade's in the city. Jade, I want to cast your mind back, not too far back because you're significantly younger than I am, but what was your first introduction to computers and programming?
Yeah. So I grew up in Sydney. I went to North Sydney Girls and pretty much thought I was going to be in finance and business my entire life. So I kind of went down that path, went to school at UNSW. How I got into tech, I pretty much just had a couple of mentors like Mick here, who I met in the scene, got myself out there and just learned more about the industry. And it's pretty much an experience of a bias for action that has gotten me to where I am today, where I'm a product manager at a company called Okta in San Francisco.
So what made you want to get out there in the first place? Like, were you curious about what computers can do? Were you curious about programming? Because you've done a good batch of hacking and design and hustling. Like you had tried a few startups, and so you got a good breadth. And I want to really get to how that breadth helps you as a product manager. But what was it there? Do you remember the first thing? Was there a product that inspired you, or?
I think I've always been really interested in understanding how different products get built and how companies build and grow, and the problems and challenges they face as they go into different stages of their life cycle. So from when I was like a startup of a very small company of like five people, like those are very different problems to what I'm dealing with now at Okta, where I own 3 products with like millions of hundreds of millions of users.
Wow.
What interests me, I think, going from there to where I am today in tech, is that the impact of scale, the scale of impact that you can achieve in tech compared to more traditional businesses is a magnitude more exciting and faster moving. Of course, it also comes with its own challenges.
Of course. Can you tell us, you mentioned the company you work for, Okta. Can you give us the quick pitch? What does Okta do?
Yeah, Okta is a cybersecurity company, so we do identity and access management. So there's 2 threads in which we can help our customers. One thread is a single sign-on. So as an employee at your wife's company, LinkedIn, she uses Okta every morning to sign in and not have to get access to all of her applications, have to remember her password. But the other side of it is identity as a service. So the same way in which you might use Stripe or Braintree to manage payments if you're facilitating payments on your e-commerce website, Okta has APIs that help you manage your users to prevent your user from getting breached and your data getting stolen. So that's kind of what Okta does.
Yeah. I help early stage tech companies, and I worked with one company that had Okta, and I had a single sign-on, and I got access to all the systems at once. Where it's harder for early stage companies, I think. Okta is a really good product, but it's you've obviously got to watch your budget. So if you don't have it, then you've got to go sign on to 10 different systems and remember all those things. So,
well, we actually do have Okta for startups, which gives a discounted or like heavily discounted, almost free for smaller companies. I think the time to implement something like Okta is when you're small, because at that stage where like it's a lot easier to lose track of all the applications you have so many places of vulnerability, and you have contractors coming in and out where data leakage and IP getting lost is a real
Wow.
real concern.
And tell me about your role. Like, what's life like as a product manager at a company like Okta? Like, tell me about what are the challenges and fun things you get to do with over a week?
Yeah, sure. So the role of a product manager is kind of what the name sounds like. You manage one or many products. Some people call it the CEO of a product, but I call it more of a janitor of a product. But that's a different philosophy question. So I have a team of engineers, about 10 at Okta, and my role is to have the vision and drive the vision and also be the point of contact and the lead for where my product will go and will grow and where its focus will be. So,
so you mentioned that Okta has sort of two main big functions, but there are multiple product managers, and so what's the breakdown about what's the scope of a product? Like, what makes?
That's a good question.
I mean, how many product managers roughly does Okta have? Like 10, 15?
We have wrapping up almost 30 product managers.
Wow. Okay.
With about 300 to 400 engineers.
Okay.
To answer your question on what is the scope of a product manager and what we do, think about Facebook, right? The Facebook Messenger app that you might use. You might have seen a redesign on the Facebook Messenger app in the last couple of months. So where like the look and feel is different, some of the buttons have moved around, there may be new functionality, games have been integrated, all of those. So there's all of those decisions on what you've seen in that product has been made by one or many product managers who have worked together to drive the product forward to what they want to be. So often it's driven by a metric, either it be user growth, user retention, or user satisfaction. But what you all see is that they're all aligning around a common vision as to where they want Facebook or Messenger to be. And they build these particular features, hopefully with data, to make us, their users, happier and more successful. Yeah. So how is that divided, the product manager's scope? That's it really depends on the company, how many product managers they have, or how the product is designed. So I own at Okta end user experiences. So I own how end users touch and interface with Okta in the workplace. So your wife uses an Okta browser extension or the Okta plugin. She probably also uses the Okta dashboard, which is the web interface. And if she wants to access a single sign-on on her phone, she uses Okta Mobile. So those are the products that my team owns. But other teams at Okta own things like authentication pipeline or multi-factor authentication and developer experience. It's kind of on the product manager and the product leadership to divvy up the products and the areas and people's strengths and what makes most sense for the company and its priorities.
Fantastic. What's the hardest thing about your job?
That's a really good question. What I love and what is also the hardest thing about my job is that you're always growing. You're always moving and learning more skills. So I think that's been both tiring and also really exciting. Yeah. So another thing is like always remembering to be grounded in being customer first and user driven. It's easy to forget who or why you're building something when you're not grounded in these in the core principles of building for the user and the problem. Yep.
Really interesting. And I know your role involves you interacting with a lot of people. It's very multifunctional. Does that get complex? Is it harder to do with people than
Is it hard to deal with people and machines? Well, I definitely can't operate in a factory. So, I mean, yes and no. One of the reflective of the role of a product manager, you have your designer, your engineering manager, your engineers, you have customer success, you have support, you have the customers themselves, and in the sense of admin, we're big, for my team, we're like B2B2C. So the admins are the ones who buy the product, but the end users are the ones that use our product. So there are a lot of stakeholders involved in the role of a product manager, and honestly, you don't have any authority over them. So it's more a way of communication, telling a story, or like using data to prove a point or to justify a point.
Yeah.
So I prefer working with people because it's exciting to see them passionate, and some of the people I work with at Okta are some of the smartest that I've ever met. So I wouldn't say it's easier or harder, but it certainly makes for different challenges and priorities.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's one of the very interesting parts of the whole role. And just to finish off, if there's a teenage girl out there who's read She's Building a Robot and she's sort of curious about the world of technology and what she could do, do you have any tips or feedback or advice for somebody making their first steps into the world of tech?
Yeah. Learn how to code. I really believe that code literacy is the next phase of literacy. Just like 100 years ago, learning to read and write was considered crazy for a lot of the population, but now it's such an integral skill that you learn as a child. I really believe that taking the first foray into writing one line of code will set you up for huge success in the future. And I think it's been a real myth that coding is unattainable or out of reach unless you are extremely privileged or have to go to computer science for an undergrad. I studied business and I taught myself how to code, and you can do that through a million online resources like Code Academy or Treehouse or Udemy, anything you can find online, just Google it.
Cool.
And yeah.
That's awesome. Jade, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's great to have gotten to know you over the last couple of years, and really proud of what you're doing there at Okta, and for supporting She's Building a Robot, my crazy idea for a book. So
yeah, I'd be interested to know what inspires you to write it.
Well, thanks for asking. There's a few things. I've always been really, really aware of the massive gap, certainly in tech, between the participation of men and women. So I've always been very, very supportive of that. And then having two daughters, just getting books with strong female characters was really hard. It felt like it was 80%, maybe even 90% male. And then I was at South by Southwest about 2 years ago. I happened to be chatting to 5 women roboticists, and they were all just telling me how they're sharing stories about how their teenage years were sort of tough because being interested in tech wasn't socially acceptable either amongst their friends or their families. And I've always loved writing, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to just start it and see what happens. And then a year later, I had this book. So yeah, I don't think it's going to solve all the problems, but hopefully if it inspires even one young girl to get excited about the world of technology, then I'll be really, really, really happy.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Jade. Again, I really, really appreciate your support, and hopefully see you soon in person, considering we live so close to each other, but busy lives, huh? And again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you later.
Bye.